Welcome everyone. I am Abby Stockwell with Department of Ecology, and I'll be moderating this session. This is Stormwater Action Monitoring, Receiving Water Status and Trends Monitoring Moving Forward by Keunyea, also with Ecology. And this presentation has been pre-recorded, and the presenter, Keunyea, is here and can answer questions in the chat, and we'll be able to answer questions live after the presentation. And there'll be time at the end for more questions. So feel free to use that chat box and enjoy the presentation.
Thank you everyone for coming to this session. I'm Keunyea with the Department of Ecology, the Water Quality Program. In this presentation, I'm going to talk about Stormwater Receiving Water Monitoring Program, which is a part of SAM, Stormwater Action Monitoring, under the Municipal Stormwater Permit. We recently revised the study design based on what we learned from the previous studies. So I'm going to show you the quick overview of our previous findings and then the new study, SAM Receiving Water Study Design Reporting Plan. Okay. The stormwater has become one of the main environmental concerns in the region. Unmanaged stormwater causes many problems, including floodings, releasing pollutant, basically impairing downstream receiving water conditions. In Washington, we have high quality of regional stormwater data set, which was collected by Phase 1 municipal stormwater permittees as their monitoring requirement. The data shows that many of metals and organics were frequently detected in stormwater samples, which was collected from the discharge point. And then some of them even exceeded chronic aquatic life criteria, including total PCBs. Stormwater general permits, such as municipal stormwater permits, are the main regulatory vehicles to manage stormwater impact and ultimately protect receiving water from stormwater impacts. In Western Washington, municipal stormwater permit covers most of urban and urbanizing area of the region. As a monitoring requirement in the permit, municipal permittees have two options. They can either conduct individual outflow monitoring or opt into SAM, Stormwater Action Monitoring. Other more typical MPDS permits requires usually the stormwater discharge sampling and then a few chemical analysis. However, municipal permittees have to cover such a large area with various activities all mixed into one permit, which makes outflow monitoring very expensive and then hard to represent the whole permit area with very limited sampling locations. So municipal permit needed a different monitoring approach that could be more cost-effective and provide a valuable information to both ecology and permittees. That is why we have SAM as a monitoring option to municipal permittees. Permittees and ecology agreed and developed the Stormwater Action Monitoring. SAM is a permittees one collaborated regional scale monitoring program. Instead of checking the stormwater quality from outflow, SAM is designed to monitor receiving water and study individual BMPs to help permittees to improve their management action by providing more practical guidance. In SAM, there are three scientific frameworks. The effectiveness studies is the biggest piece. More than half of effort and fund goes into effectiveness program. It focuses on studying individual BMP effectiveness and answer why or why not various management actions are working. Compared to this effectiveness study, status and trend part asks larger scale questions about receiving water conditions. The main questions are, the first, what is the current conditions of receiving water and how it changes over time, how these conditions are related to stormwater discharge and stormwater management actions in the region. The receiving water monitoring, the part covers the two study regions, one in Puget Sound and another in the Lower Columbia region. In this talk, I'm only going to talk about Puget Sound area and their study result and the design. So far, 4 receiving water studies have been done back in 2015 to 2018, and 3 of them were actual sampling studies in Nearshore area. In the first round of stream sampling in 2015, total 105 spatially balanced stream sites were selected in the region, and half of them were inside and another half were outside of the urban growth area. The subset of them, 80 sites, were selected for more frequent water sampling. Previous nearshore studies focused only on the urban growth area and then sampled mussel and sediment at 40 random sites. At these sites, we measured receiving water health indicators. For streams, we collected monthly water samples and analyzed that for nutrients, metals, and organics. Sediment samples were collected in summertime. The sediment chemistry was only analyzed from the fine sediment fractions for metals, organic chemicals, and pesticides. We only focus the fine sediment because urban runoff tends to carry more fine particles and the more pollutants tend to bind into fines. The biotic endpoint were considered as more integrated receiving water health indicators. And for streams, B-IBI and diatom, and for nearshore, muscle tissue contamination levels were used. The very first thing we looked at from the data was the water and sediment quality detection frequency. So the left side, the table shows the water quality data, and then the right side is about the sediment chemistry. And then the green box with the letter A represent high detection frequency over 50% of time. And the red with the letter C means those chemicals were rarely detected. For water quality, organic contaminants and some metals were rarely detected. And conventional parameters such as nutrients and then metals like copper or chromium were more reliably detected in water samples. Compared to those, the monthly sampling efforts that we put into and then chemical analysis, water chemistry didn't tell us much because of lots of non-detects. Therefore, we didn't find the significant differences between the area outside the UGA and inside of the UGA. For sediment chemistry, which is shown on the right side of this table, the many of individual PAHs, PCB, and phthalates were still rarely detected. However, in some cases, detection frequencies at the sites and sediment metal, phthalates, and common herbicide were well detected in both within UGA and outside the UGA side. And those samples also showed the differences between within and outside of UGA samples. Overall, the sediment chemistry tended to give us a better information about the contaminant level and the urban gradient in streams compared to the monthly water sampling data. In terms of Biorig Indicator, B-IBI, that we used for streams, larger proportion, over 80% of streams within the UGA were in poor conditions, which shows here in red color, and only 10% of streams were in good condition. The B-IBI score outside of UGA were slightly better. Less than half of streams were in good condition, and about 30% of streams were in poor conditions. And we also found key stressors that caused a poor B-IBI score in the region. So among those stressors, land cover informations, including canopy cover from watershed or riparian level, and urban development level explain the B-IBI score the most. In the Puget Sound nearshore, mussel tissues were used to assess bioaccumulation of a common stormwater pollutant in the urban nearshore. PAHs, PCBs, PBD, and DDT were well detected in most of mussel tissues and showed clear spatial variations by urban gradient. In these graphs, city, the most urbanized group, shows the higher bioaccumulation levels of those chemicals in mussel tissues. Nearshore sediment chemistry result was pretty interesting and telling us a very different story. Despite being at the same sampling site as the mussel study, we didn't find the strong connections between contamination level in sediment and then urban gradient of the contributing watershed. Instead, ocean circulations and then sediment movement appear to have a strong influence on sediment chemistry. In this graph, the none, which is having a blue box here, means no current movement area, which also can be called as a sediment depositional area. And that area has higher chemical concentrations than other places. So, so far we look at the brief summary of the previous studies, and all of these 3 studies were done during last permit cycles, and then those were the first attempt to get the regional assessment of stormwater receiving water conditions. After that, we spent about 1.5 years to reevaluate the study design to see whether there is a way to improve the monitoring design to answer the questions better and faster. This process included numerous discussion meetings with the previous project leads and then many other federal, state, and local agency scientists. I'm going to show you all the major changes that we have made to this study design moving forward. The first change was about the sampling schedule. Before, we sampled 105 stream sites once during the last permit cycle, and were planned to do once every 5 years. And for nearshore mussel and then sediment studied, we plan to do from 40 sites within UGA every other year. Moving forward, we decided to conduct the stream study every year starting from 2020. So we just completed our first sampling at the total of 33 sites. The 33 sites are all random, but we'll have some new first visit site and then some revisit second or third visit sites. After the third visit, those sites will be removed from the study and replaced with the new sites. The mussel study will be done every 2 years, starting from this winter, 2021. The mussel study will have the same number of sites, 33, with a combination of a first, second, and the third visit site again. And again, after the third visit, that will be replaced with a new site. We mixed those sites to have a new and then revisit site to make a total 33 sites in each sampling event, as having those combination can improve both trend detection power and the better representativeness of the region. For nearshore sediment monitoring, we are gonna hold off the monitoring planning for a while until we know more about the water and the sediment circulation in the ocean. The second change is about the way we categorize the area to see the urban gradient. In the previous study, we used the urban growth area, UGA boundary, to differentiate the urban development gradient and then also stormwater impact of the region. However, UGA boundary was originally designed to help planning, and it is not a direct measure of any type of development level. So it did not stratify the sampling area very well for us. So from this study moving forward, we decided to move away from using UGA boundary and apply the impervious surface cover instead to stratify the study area. The impervious cover is more direct and the most frequently used measure of urbanizations. So therefore, that can represent the stormwater discharge and then chemistry impact well to the receiving water. The study area was then categorized into 4 groups based on the average impervious cover percent of the watershed. The different color on the map represent the potential sampling point in different urban gradient categories. As you can see here, the green color area, which is from 0 to 10% of the impervious cover area, is disproportionately large. So selecting certain number of sites per each strata, like what you can see in this table, that will force the study to include the area from every categories, making the study represent a broad range of urban gradient of the region. After stratifying the area using the impervious cover, we then selected 33 probabilistic sites. And this is an example done for the stream monitoring. And the right side map is the final stream sampling site for next 20 years. For nearshore, study design is very similar to stream studies, except the sampling will be done every other year. The right side map shows the final random, again, 33 sites per year for the next 20 years of sampling events. We also reviewed the parameters and made some changes on that. In 2015 stream study, many of the stormwater-related pollutants were non-detected in water samples. So we are going to drop the monthly water sampling and only focus on integrated indicators like sediment chemistries and biotic endpoint. Water samples will be still collected once in summertime for more conventional parameters. To evaluate the stormwater impact on hydrology, the study design included now the continuous water level and temperature monitoring for 1 full water year at each site. The nearshore mussel study showed the reliable detection level and then contaminant gradient by urban development level in the previous studies. So we are going to basically use the same parameters, including organics, metals, and the nutrients, the measured from the muscle tissues. This new study design allow us to have a more frequent reporting. So we decided to the reporting more frequently. We are gonna publish a short summary report, which include a site-specific information and the regional status assessment result every year for stream and every other year for nearshore mussel study. And once in every 5 years, we are gonna conduct more intensive data analysis to report out the regional trend and identify the key stressors driving the regional trend and status of the receiving water conditions. We believe that this new study design that we have been implemented in this permit cycle from 2020 will make the stormwater receiving water monitoring more cost effective and statistically stronger. Now we have a more frequent sampling frequency than before, and we stratify the study area using more direct measure of a stormwater and urban gradient and focus on more well-detected and stormwater-related chemicals. And we want to have a more frequent reporting from this permit cycle to better communicate with the municipal permittees and then others who may be interested in the studies. With that, I'd like to appreciate over 90 permittees who participated into SAM, and then they also provide a valuable recommendations and suggestions to SAM program and fundings. Especially the Stormwater Work Group and the SAM oversight committees have SAM to be more transparent and then permittee-focused programs. We also appreciate technical support from many different programs and agencies, including Ecology's Environmental Assessment Program, GIS Unit, EPA, and many project leads from USGS, King County, DFW, and DNR. So thank you for your help and then collaborations. If anyone want to know more about the study details or the STEM status and trend monitoring program, you can contact me by email, or you can visit our webpage here, or you could also contact the individual study lead that I listed here. Thank you for your attention. And then with that, I'd like to take some questions. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Keunyea. So now we have plenty of time for questions if you want to put those in the chat. I have one to start off with, Keunyea. So
Okay.
chemicals don't have numeric standards to compare the results to. For these cases, how do you assess the condition of the receiving water in terms of these contamination levels?
Yes, for those chemical that doesn't have any standard threshold, then we use the reference condition. So SAM monitors 3 handpicked reference site every year, and then we are going to use those reference condition as our baseline, and then set up a threshold to compare the other 33 the random site conditions too. So that will be our approach to go further.
Okay, thanks. Another question. So from 2020, new study designs have been implemented for SAM status and trend monitoring. Will you still be able to use the previous data collected during the last permit cycle to evaluate the status and especially the trend going forward?
Yes, so the previous study monitoring done in 2015 and 2016 were actually using a slightly different study design. So we are not gonna able to use all of the information, but using those old data set, we are gonna re-stratify those to basically applying the new study design into the old data set, and then whatever that meets the new criteria, then we are still going to use those subset of the data set and then continue to use that for the trend analysis. And then we should be able to also make a status using those subset of data for that time period as well.
So in reference to your first question, response to your my first question, are the reference sites that you're comparing the results to in undeveloped watersheds?
Yeah, most of them are in the undeveloped watershed area, and then they are hand-picked site, and then I believe those are less than 10% of the impervious cover of the watershed area. But in addition to those, it collected several parameters, samples, and then analyzed the parameters, including B-IBI, and then whatever that shows the good quality of a condition, and they are registered as a permanent reference condition site. So we basically followed the EAP program's reference condition area and then use the same the location for the SAM study.
Here's a question in the chat. We're in the process of joining SAM as we recently received our permit. For new members of SAM, will our areas be sampled for the first year, or can it be a number of years before we see sampling performed in our area?
So I don't know. Can you tell me what cities or area you're from? So basically the SAM doesn't exclude any of the area, whether they are opt into the SAM or just conduct their individual studies. So we usually use the all of the Puget Sound, the lowland as our study frame. And then and that is only for the Puget Sound. So Lower Columbia only includes the permit area as their study, but the Puget Sound area, we basically cover the whole Puget Sound streams and the nearshore in the study. And then we select the 33 random site. So one permittees might have their sampling site this year, but maybe not for the next year. So yeah, the Navy, yeah, the federal area and the Navy are included in the study area already. And then before, I believe if the access was denied, then we basically removed from the study list. But I believe from now, we are gonna have permissions to access that area. Then we should be able to sample those areas as well.
There's about 1 minute left in the last question. Could you say more about the stormwater chemistry that you decided not to sample because of low detection?
Yeah, so we did a monthly water sampling, and then most of the water sample, even during the storm season, were very low detect. And then so that includes the PCBs, PBD, phthalates, and then basically lots of the organics were non-detect in the water sample. And then that's why we decided to basically drop the monthly water sampling. And it was more of cost-effective decisions rather than whether that's important or not. And instead of doing the water sample, we are going to focus on the sediment chemistry. And then we believe that because organics also accumulate into the sediment area, then we can also still be able to see the influence from the stormwater in the sediment chemistry too. And then the pesticide was also non-detect in most cases too.
Thank you so much, Keunyea, and everyone else enjoy the rest of Municon. You can find Keunyea's contact information in her bio on the platform.
Thank you.